All right, we did it. All right, everyone. Greg Stale here from Diverge Media. Welcome to the Sunday show. So obviously the one today we named it Your Own Personal Gulag. We're going to be pretty straightforward with, I guess I'll say, just the writing on the wall here with a lot of the agendas. And if we don't take a stand now, you're not going to get a chance to stand. Everyone, we know our correspondent, Paul Staley. It looks like he's frozen though. So we're just waiting for his connection to come back in solid. But let's get started here. So we're going to start with high vaccine rates. And basically, let's go our rolled in data to start here. And we'll pull up this chart. So our rolled in data is run by Oxford University. And this is deaths, confirmed deaths, 7-day rolling average. Right now, South Africa is going up, but we're watching Sweden currently below Canada in deaths, as well as Africa below North America. So when we look at these, one of the most interesting things here is notice there's not this acute spike here in Africa, and that probably has something to do with where they are in the hemisphere. Sweden had bigger spikes. They were completely open the entire time, though. But basically follow the same pattern. You can see this is pretty seasonal. So we're going to pop back over here. Let's see. We got you? Perfect.
Yeah.
There we go. So Paul's outside enjoying the sweet weather and his beautiful patio. That's actually, I'm kind of jealous right now. That's the perfect way to do it, Joe.
And well, as long as the internet connection stays good, we're good.
Well, exactly, right? So we're talking about the high vaccine rates here in Canada. Obviously, we have one of the highest rates in the world, and it just appears it's not good enough. I mean, we already have Trudeau. We're going to get it to our second topic, but already talking about boosters. And I guess the question I have, I'm just going to lay it out, but like, when is enough enough? And kind of what they're saying to me indirectly without saying it is if they need all these people to get the shot, it's either about control or that's not nearly as effective as they originally portrayed to people. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I think that we're ignoring data. That's the case that's been since the beginning in terms of ivermectin, HCQ. We're ignoring data in favor of vaccination. We're even taking recommendations from the NIH, which is Canadian-based. Need to look at world data if we need to know where we're venturing into. People are ahead of us, and that isn't technically an advantage at this point because we can see what they're doing, what mistakes were made, how to counter, how to press forward. Like, if you're not looking at Israel right now, why? Like, what are you doing really? Like, what information can you take from them and make it improvements and roll it out here? But you know, we both, I'm sure you feel the same way. We're not going to get any transparency or any pivot at all.
Yeah, you're just chopping up a little bit, Paul. But I'm going to pull back here. Yeah, sorry. There it is. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Take it away. You got your connections there now.
As you missed everything I said already?
Pretty much. Everything just lagged out. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying that, like, if we're not looking towards other, are we going to pivot and take pros and cons, learn from it, and just gonna keep saying, "Go get your free ice cream and go get your vaccine"? Like, is that
right.
what the plan?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have
Is
to.
like,
Yeah, connection drop, Paul. Oh, I'm going to just pull you off here for now, but we'll pull you back in here when your connection's tightened up. Sorry. Yeah, so obviously they're not going to pivot. I think that's what he's saying. And as far as we're offering free ice cream, we're offering all these kinds of things to try to get the rates up. They keep shifting the goalpost. And so we went from we need to hit this rate, then they jumped it up to 75% for second dose, 80% for first dose. Now they're saying it may even be more. But more than that, if you haven't seen this article, I'm just going to pull this up. As far as the most countries that are in the top 25 for vaccination, island nations excluded, this is again from our world in data. There's 9 countries that are in the top 25 for vaccination that are also in the top 25 for deaths per 1 million. Those countries are Chile, Uruguay, United States, United Kingdom, Spain, Italy, Hungary, Belgium, and San Marino. So obviously there's lots of variables at play when we get into death data, capacity, how much money they have, density, where they are in the hemisphere, on and on the list goes. But I do find it curious that 9 of the most vaccinated countries, which is supposed to reduce ICUs and deaths, are currently in the top 25 for deaths. Now, they're probably, like, I don't know where they are currently standing, but that's where they rank overall. So then we get into the least vaccinated. 6 of the least vaccinated, the ones that are in the bottom 25 for that vaccination, there's 6 countries that are in the bottom 25 that are also in the bottom 25 for the lowest deaths per 1 million. They include Burkina Faso, Benin, Nigeria, South Sudan, Chad, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we're going to get into something here, but let's come back to this. Moving on. Sorry, everybody. I got my banners. We're going to try to keep. There we go. Oprah boosters Trudeau, and you get a vaccine, and you get one, and you get one. So here is our prime minister talking about booster shots all the way into 2024.
While more and more Canadians are getting vaccinated right now, it's also important to plan ahead for the future. We've reached an agreement with Pfizer for 35 million booster doses for next year and 30 million in the year after. This deal includes options to add 30 million doses in both 2022 and 2023, and an option for 60 million doses in 2024. Pfizer has been a solid partner for Canada in this fight against COVID-19, and we're happy to be one of the first countries to secure an agreement with them going forward. These boosters will be the latest version of the Pfizer vaccine based on research and testing. They will help us keep the virus under control.
All right. That's the Canada Public Access Channel. That's your Prime Minister talking about securing booster shots into 2024. So now let's just think logically here, everyone. Boosters into 2024. Why would we need boosters if we don't plan on giving people boosters? Okay, so boosters are on the way. Vaccination passport and boosters. If we're rolling out a vaccine passport and we have boosters potential all the way to 2024, what's to say that you don't get your booster, all of a sudden you fall into that category of unvaccinated? Now you're part of that group. We need to look at this objectively, and I mean the writing's right on the wall. 2024 they got boosters, and then they're rolling out this passport, which we're going to get into the details more deeply here. But the reality is what they're proposing is legitimately allowing, you don't need a camp. Like, if we want to create a tiered society and we want to create a separate society for vaccinated and unvaccinated, well, I think they've learned from history and would say that it's probably not best to gather all the unvaccinated and put them in one area and create a ghetto or a gulag. But what we have now is it's your own personal gulag. In the sense that if we roll out these vaccine passports and they do truly restrict many of the facets of life that we're seeing Ireland, France, etc. roll out, to the point where we keep ramping this up and upping the ante of what you can and can't access without this. And they're already planning the vitriol for people who don't go along with the status quo. You really think it's not going to get to the point where it's going to get worse and worse? It's not. They're not going to have to cut you off from everything. They're just not going to allow you service. And this is kind of what the passport will do for them. And it's interesting to me, it seems to be very little scientific evidence to back what they're saying. And they even acknowledge this in the Ontario Science Table's own paper, saying there's really not scientific evidence for it. So why are we doing it? Is it politically motivated? And it sure seems to be. That's my personal opinion and takeaway. But why, to the point where we're rolling this out? It doesn't make sense from a health perspective. The most vulnerable can still get it and transmit it. If it's to reduce ICUs and hospitalizations, but you got the shot, so you're not going to have an ICU or hospitalization because you have a reduced risk, then what are you afraid of? Isn't it me taking that risk upon myself? And furthermore, can anyone that is dog whistling and saying that we need everyone to do and take part in this, can any of those people tell me what the absolute risk reduction is of these vaccines according to one of the most prestigious medical papers in the world, The Lancet? So we're gonna touch on a bunch of this. Looks like Paul's back in. We're hoping his internet will hold up, but we'll find out here shortly. But here we go. Let's get into it. Are you there, Paul? All right. So, I mean, I'll get your take. I hope you heard me, but with what's being proposed, they're basically proposing you won't be able to access and participate in society the normal way unless you take this interim approved thing that is still going through and figuring out the long-term efficacy and safety. If you don't participate in that, you're now going to be subdued. I call it your own personal gulag. Hey, that's fine. You have your own personal choice, right? This is kind of the reasoning of the super pro crowd. Well, you can do that, but you don't have a right to put me at risk, and therefore we're just not going to, right? So in their head, it's okay to completely discriminate because of their fear. Now, using that criteria, if fear is my reason to discriminate, you can see how that would be extremely bad. But they don't pay any attention to it. It's, again, they're by all accounts, my opinion of the Vax passport is it's your own personal gulag. They literally want to restrict you so that you can't participate in society. They wouldn't need to do anything. You're just not going to be able to participate. And that, for me, this doesn't seem like it's about health. The Ontario Science Table can tell me why it's about health or how it's related to science. It's just, either it's another drive to get more people to get jabbed, or it's politically motivated. But it isn't about safety, because I mean our most vulnerable population's already got it. So looking through some of the messages here. Sorry, Paul. Yeah, the internet connection's too spotty. I don't think it's going to work out today. But yes, we will be considered public health risk because we refuse to stop spreading misinformation. Yeah, while we're talking about this, I wonder if I can find it. But I found it interesting. There's polls going around now by party, and they're starting to pin people like, oh, if you don't get this, and they're starting to put out political polls now by party and drawing inferences. Like, I'm just saying there's one party that seems to be more against the vaccinations than other parties. And people are starting to take notice and pay attention to these things. And that's not a good thing. When we're going to start dividing among people's personal medical decision, this is dangerous territory. Very, very dangerous territory. And if you're not going to speak now, if you're not going to speak now, you're not going to have a chance. You're not going to have an opportunity because the time is short. If you're a study of history and you look at some of the crazy stuff that's happened, if you read the Gulag Archipelago, one of the quotes in it, and I'm paraphrasing, is basically he said if we would have known what was at stake, perhaps we would have done something different. We wouldn't just cowered in fear and waited for the worst to happen. Let's continue on here. Sorry, everyone. Continuing on this thought. Canadian politics needs more transparency and accountability. So I'm just going to walk you through this. This is kind of a story I did that didn't get much of attention, but hopefully walking you through this, you'll understand why it bothers me. Because, so the Prime Minister, before he ran to be the Liberal Party leader, he went through the leadership race and he had to do a bunch of, jumping through hoops. But in 2013, the Ottawa Citizen's Glenn McGregor wrote an article about the Prime Minister because he was talking about his assets and all the different money his family had been given him. And they've scrubbed this article from the internet. And he said at the time that the Prime Minister, quote, is likely invested in oil sands companies, but he isn't certain. And then he said, quote, while he is aware of the approximate value of his holdings, he pays no attention to which stocks he owns through the company. This is the quality of your media here in Canada. The Prime Minister put this money in a blind trust. Now, it's not really blind. It means he can't manage it. If you look in the blind trust, it's like you can know what's going into the trust. It doesn't prevent you from knowing and kind of tracking from the outside looking in. Well, again, they scrubbed this article, and I wonder why. Because he says, well, he literally wanted people to believe, listen, I got all this money from my family. They gave me all these assets, but I didn't even care to know. I didn't even care to know what the money was. He literally wants you to believe he's so arrogant, trust fund type, that he didn't even care to know where the money was coming from. I call shenanigans. You don't think he once looked into it? And he says, quote, I'm likely invested in oil sands companies, but he isn't certain. Okay. Well, his family comes from oil. So probably is an understatement. Likely is an understatement. Now, while he's aware of the approximate value of the holdings, he pays no attention. Really? So this article disappears. I actually put an access to information request in where they said they didn't have any record of his personal assets. And I specifically referred to this article. But I found it through one of the way back time machines and archived. And it just blew me away because this is 2013. It comes out and he goes, I'm likely to invest in oil sands companies. And then he goes, well, I'm not aware of he is aware of the approximate value of the holdings. He pays no attention. And then I thought of all the things that happened with oil. And then I'm like, did he really not know? Where's his oil assets lie? Why don't I get to know? Are they foreign? Are they domestic? Does he know? Again, if he doesn't know, I guess it's okay. But we're supposed to believe he does all this stuff. But this is the state of our media today, where an article can get scrubbed. And this isn't new, obviously. We talked about the Ontario Nurses Association, their article about mandatory mask in court essentially not holding up. And that article disappeared. And so it isn't really new, but if this is the state of accountability where there's not even a follow-up question on that, really? Are you flipping kidding me? Hey, I'm likely invested in oil sands companies, but I don't know. Okay, do you think maybe domestic or foreign? What do you mean likely? I would follow up with 3 or 5 questions, or 12 or 100. Apparently not. No. No worries there. Now, Glenn McGregor, he went from the Ottawa Citizen to, I believe, reporting for the CBC in Ottawa. Is it coincidental? I don't know. 2013, he writes that article, and again, I'm just like, man, if this is the state of accountability, hi, I'm going to run for prime minister. I'm likely investing in oil sands companies. I don't even know how much money that would be. You don't have any follow-up questions? And it's only gotten worse. I mean, $1.1 billion annually to the CBC. Over $600 million annually in tax credits. A lot of these businesses probably wouldn't be able to hang around without the government handout. And so why are we in a situation where these stories go untold and don't get really drilled and questioned the way they should? Because we don't have a press that truly wants to hold the prime minister accountable. In fact, if we did, they don't get the chance. Because you see, only approved outlets get to ask questions, and in those approved outlets, only approved journalists get to ask those questions. So it's a great system if you're in power. But if if you're going to ask a tough question, you're probably going to get booted, not to be able to ask questions again. So there's that. But let's get into something a little more. We'll get outside of this topic of I don't know. I got a couple more here. Adding this. We're talking about doing a passport for this, restricting freedoms even more. Remember, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve just to prevent the overwhelming of hospital systems. They weren't ever overwhelmed, at least not any more than was typical of an influenza season or a bad virus season, because I've shown the reports before of hospitals at 120, 130, 140% capacity during bad virus outbreaks from the CTVs, from CBC, from Global. People seem to forget that this isn't a new issue in Canada, but I digress. The majority of COVID deaths were seniors who had severe health problems. We need to protect the most vulnerable. Cost-benefit analysis. We've only been saying this since we started as an outlet. I apologize. I'm going to let the frustration out today. But according to Stats Canada, a disproportionate share of COVID deaths were seniors, 65 years and older. And a majority of deaths between 2020 and 2021 consisted of elderly individuals above the age of 85 who had a variety of health conditions. They were above the average age of death. That was the average age of death for COVID individuals. But I digress. Here we are. This chart alone. If you're still advocating for lockdowns, you're saying exactly what you're about. 85 years and older, excess deaths, COVID-19 deaths. Okay, so COVID could be blamed for excess deaths in that category. Same 65 to 84, but notice the inversion. When we get below that of the non-vulnerable for the most part. Triple, 2/3, 45 to 64. Roughly 10% difference, just eyeballing, 0 to 44. So lockdown measures, what we've known all along. The Lancet said lockdowns don't prevent transmission. They don't do much of anything. We know this since August of 2020. But we're still going to keep doing the same things. And then we know that the measures have caused many overdoses, suicides. Kids' Help phone blew up last year. And we just ignored it. In fact, we had people that were advising our political leaders openly mock the people from Sick Kids that put out a report speaking on behalf of the children who were crying out for help. And he attacked them. We're going to continue here. Now, if you think this is ending anytime soon, time to wake up. Mask mandate may stay for other viruses. Whoa, where are you getting that from, Greg? Dr. Kieran Moore, the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario, actually. Let's talk about it. Here we go. Mask up for other viruses? Well, and this, by the way, is 100% the fault of every single individual who advocated for lockdowns. If you're admitting that this is now a problem, you're also admitting that you caused the problem indirectly for those who have the discernment to see. In the interview, Dr. Kieran Moore said that there is, quote, a virus called RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. And as people stop wearing masks and socially get together, that virus is actually spreading very rapidly in the southern United States, causing children who didn't get exposed to it during the winter to get that virus into their chest, and it will mimic COVID. Oh, we put the little healthy dose of fear in there at the end, right? The comments don't provide relief for parents. That's for sure. But what does the CDC describe RSV as? It calls it a common respiratory virus that usually causes mild cold-like symptoms. It also is it's a normal part of childhood illnesses. But basically, my takeaway is that when you lock down a society and they can't, when you lock down a society, they don't have any way to build their immune system. This was completely predictable. Stay inside. Don't do anything. Wash your hands all the time. Don't touch dirt, little Johnny. Like, we used to make fun of these type of parents. They're called helicopter parents. And then we told all of society to do it for children. Oh man, why are we seeing such an explosion in such a common common virus, common childhood virus? It's something that was almost never an issue, and all of a sudden we're seeing an explosion because you isolated children from building immune system. I was talking to a midwife the other day talking about COVID babies. They've termed an actual term called COVID babies to describe babies that haven't developed any immune system and are struggling and getting sick often because they don't have any immune system. They never built it. They're locked in with one family member and they're not touching and interacting with germs in any way. And this is the solution we've come up with. Are you kidding me? All right, looks like we got another correspondent coming back. Boom. Good.
I'm indoors now.
Indoors.
I have the exact same connection I did outdoors, indoors, but it works better now. I don't know why.
No idea. All right. Well, I've been just ranting for the better part of probably 15 minutes now. So, I mean,
I saw that.
I mean, at this point, like, it's just the writing's on the wall. Like, it's not about health. It's not. And they're talking about boosters in the 2024. Now they're talking about rolling out a passport that will drastically limit your ability to live if you don't choose to participate in an interim. Like, for someone my age, Paul, like, there's that website you talked about. It shows like your absolute risk of like dying from COVID based on your age and weight and sex, I think it is. And it's like,
and then it showed the difference if you were to be vaccinated.
Yeah. And for me, it was
exposure.
like, I have like a no chance. It's like 0.00007% chance you might die. And then it's like, okay, what's the chance of an adverse reaction? Is it 0.00006? Like, do you know what I mean? Do I even want to play that game? Why do I care? I'm 27. The same thing happened when I was in the military. I was like, they're telling us to stand down because it's too dangerous. I signed up to potentially have to give my life. Like, I had planned on like going on tour, and in my mind, I was like, that might be a possibility. And they're like, no, Greg, far too dangerous for somebody your age. I know you're 27. And then the military in general is one of the most in shape institutions in the entire country. But we're terrified that this young, fit workforce is going to succumb to a virus that takes out the elderly. It's like, oh God. And this was early on. Like, we kind of already had the numbers a couple months in, and you're looking at the hospitalization numbers. You're like, yeah, this seems to be affecting one group more than the other. And you would say cooler heads could have prevailed at that point in time, but they never have since.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Honestly, now we're talking like, are they even effective?
We're going to get into absolute risk reduction.
Worth our time? Because, like, yeah, I think for me it was like 0.0007% less likely I die from COVID, while also subjecting myself to the adverse effects of a vaccine to get that 0.0007%. So at that point, that's just cost-benefit analysis, but we've thrown that out the window for kids. So 12 to 18, someone in that age range, it's 14.1 out of 100,000 will see a serious adverse effect from the vaccine, while 0.1 out of 100,000 will see a serious symptom from COVID. we want them vaccinated before they go back to school, is what they're telling you. You're literally driving them into harm's way to do this. This is why cost-benefit analysis are so important. You're literally causing harm. Do no harm is public health's motto. You're literally causing harm. We've lost the plot. We had plans, pandemic plans in place pre-COVID, thrown them out the window. Everything you've done has been a colossal failure.
Mm-hmm.
Every single thing you did, you can literally point to now and say, that failed, that failed, that failed.
But they still act like nothing did and everything was right. I watched a post the other day from one of the members of the Ontario Science Table talking about basically the dip, like of seasonality, and being like, see, we locked down, pats on the backs.
Yeah, no, we
This
talked
is the
about
mentality.
that. But like the second lockdown that we were predicting, the third lockdown would be in line with the next spike that is seasonality, and they'll pull the shackles off at the end of it.
As soon as they can claim credit. Yep.
On point. They did it exact date. And
It's kind of scary how often we've been right.
Wow.
I started thinking about it, and I've been going back through the history. I thought about that, and I'll bring up one other one, but like multiple times we foreshadowed what was going to happen.
Well, where's my pat on the back for being right the whole time? Now these guys are saying what we've been saying for over a year. But the issue I have is now we're talking vaccines might not be as effective as possible while looking at Israel's numbers. Well, we've totally denounced ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. You told me vitamin D was fake news, Patty. So what are we actually trying
dangerous misinformation.
It's just, I don't know. It's honestly embarrassing. We literally have a bunch of alt-left individuals guiding us, and they've tried to push this wokeness that is, you're doing society a favor by going this route. I didn't realize closing our businesses, losing our houses, our retirement. Like, all the small business owners, if you're 55 years old and you're over $100,000 in debt now from the pandemic, you're going to recover that before your retirement date? Probably not.
Don't worry, they'll just pass a law so you can work till you die. It'll be okay.
Oh, yeah. CPP, we'll just cash that out and give it to the small business owners, and then no one can retire.
That's right.
Like, it's just like, what are we actually doing here? Like, nothing, apparently.
Like, let me drive this home again, though.
Did you catch that little, almost like a slip-up when that's the PCR test?
Yeah.
That it basically said the next test, instead of saying the PCR test couldn't differentiate between the flu and COVID, it said the next test needs to be able to differentiate from seasonal influenza and COVID-19.
Yep.
So
we pulled it.
Sorry, what was that you were just saying? So we literally just admitted?
Okay, what do we got?
Here just admitted when we were all last year talking about how, the flu just disappeared. That's funny.
I literally shared this a couple hours ago. I shared this in November of 2020. It was from the FDA. It was about the emergency interim use of the PCR test. And here's what it said, okay? Just so I can read it out for everyone again to just say I told you so. Quote, detection of viral RNA may not indicate the presence of infectious virus or that 2019 nCoV is the causative agent for clinical symptoms. What? Say that again. Detection of viral RNA may not indicate the presence of infectious virus. So it may not even mean that you're infectious with anything or that COVID is the causative agent for any clinical symptoms. I continue. The performance of this test has not been established for monitoring treatment of COVID infection. The performance of this test has not been established for screening of blood. And this test cannot rule out diseases caused by other bacterial or viral pathogens. It could pick up influenza and other things. And then they amplified it to ungodly cycle thresholds. And where did the flu go? I mean, I'm not saying COVID isn't a thing. I think what they did is they encompassed so they could grab everything and make it seem like a bigger problem than it was. If I was putting on my conspiracy hat, or they just used the test with no regard whatsoever, just to go the route where they, attributing no malice, they're just idiots and gave no thought to the fact that this thing could pick up other bacteria, other viral illnesses, and then ignored the warnings that basically above 25 cycles is usually not infectious, almost certainly above 35. I think anything above 35, they've never been able to actually prove it's infectious in a lab, meaning it could infect another cell line in a petri dish. Yep.
Yeah, that goes in line with Manitoba's top doctor months ago saying his own studies in their lab show that 56% weren't contagious. So really,
Yep.
this has been a case-demic, as they've coined it, for the last 18 months, and now half the cases weren't real cases, which goes back to asymptomatic testing is a waste of time. We again
100%.
foreshadowed this how many times, citing credible peer-reviewed studies.
I literally put out a document asking for them to change their PCR testing protocol to stop testing. You remember this? I said, stop testing asymptomatic people. Here's why. I quoted Fauci. I quoted a bunch of the literature and the interim approval, I think, as well. And then I sent the letter out to MPs and to the no answer, of course. But I mean, it's been very obvious for those paying attention. But again, like, we're just conspiracy theories. We're just insert XYZ. I'm actually going to pull up a psychology thread that I think adequately, it's probably the most valuable thread on COVID I've ever read, because it explains the psychology of why people are doing what they're doing right now. But before we do that, I forgot to play this. I want
to rates and saying, oh, it's great that everybody else is getting vaccinated. Out to everyone out there who is looking at our rising vaccination rates and saying, oh, it's great that everybody else is getting vaccinated, that means I won't have to. Think again. We're going to continue to live with COVID-19 as a world over the coming years until we eradicate this. That means there will continue to be cases here and there, including in Canada, in the coming months. And those cases will be primarily amongst people who didn't get vaccinated or didn't get their second dose of vaccination.
Yeah, so there's your prime minister. You know, if you think that because we have high vax rates, you don't need to get yours, think again. And he tries to be all intimidating, which, I mean, he isn't. He wouldn't be intimidating except for the fact that he's in charge of my government.
He's a daffodil through and through.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it just blows me away. Okay, I'm going to pull up this thread, psychology thread. I want to read it out and get your thoughts, Paul, because I think it adequately describes literally exactly what we've seen happen throughout the pandemic, put in better words than I could have ever done myself. And so here it is. Patrick Fagan put this together. Why can some people see uncomfortable things while others can't? A psychology thread. Do I have no, I don't have it up. There we go. We'll pull it up for everyone. Okay, so obviously we've all seen that picture. The cow pointing out to the other cows, the meat packer plant, holding up the sign of how they're going to get cut up. I see Mr. Conspiracy Theory is added again. All right, so here goes. Here's the different things he points out as the psychological reasons people are doing what they're doing. He calls it willful blindness, also known as the ostrich effect. Our minds won't let us acknowledge something if it will cause psychological pain, so we ignore it. Say it doesn't matter, rationalize excuses. Regression and fear of freedom. This one was interesting. I will talk about this a little bit more, Paul, but it said freedom comes with risk and responsibility. Most crave a return to the submissive comfort of childhood where adults took care of everything. They want the state to take care of them. System justification. We cannot imagine that the system we grew up in and benefited from could do us harm. We assume it always has our best interest at heart. Terror management. Thinking about death or the idea that our psychological construction and reality might go extinct causes us to close up psychologically and become intolerant of other ideas. Conformity. I think this is one of the biggest during this pandemic. We assume the crowd must know what it's doing, and we are terrified of being ostracized since this meant death in evolutionary terms. You couldn't ostracize yourself from the group when we were small tribes and things like this because you would kill yourself if the tribe didn't want you around anymore. You need food. So conformity. Cognitive dissonance. When something doesn't match our expectations in the world, it causes uncomfortable psychological tension, which we seek to minimize through defense mechanisms like denial. In-group bias. Being social animals, we tend to reject information if it clashes with our group identity. And last, there's a couple more, sorry. We simply don't have time nor the energy to process a lot of new complex information or change thinking habits. Learned helplessness. If we have learned, feel that we are powerless, we don't even bother to try challenging the status quo. We just become passive and accepting. And authority. We assume that those with credentials, I thought this is so perfect on the authority. We assume that those with credentials or in positions of authority must know what they are doing. So we trust them implicitly and follow their instructions. How many times do we hear this senseless call to expert said without ever understanding what the expert actually said, where they quoted it from, if it was even real data or models and predictions, like all this type of stuff. How many times does that happen? It's constant throughout this pandemic. And I just thought that thread lit it up. But I want to tackle two in particular with you, Paul. Willful blindness. Our minds won't let us acknowledge something that will cause psychological pain, so we ignore it. And regression. In fear of freedom. Freedom comes with risk and responsibility. Most crave a return to the submissive comfort of childhood where adults took care of everything. They want the state to take care of them. So let's start with willful blindness. Our minds won't acknowledge something that is painful for us psychologically. Oh, my government doesn't have my best interest at heart. They have their best interest at heart. That's why when they made mistake after mistake after mistake, they'll never admit that they were wrong. They're actually always going to act like they were right. I don't want to acknowledge that. That's psychologically painful to think that your government's being dishonest, manipulating data for their own benefit. So we just choose not to believe it. What's your take?
I mean, do you need a take? That's exactly what's happening. When like 70% of the population just blindly accepts information and only reads a damn headline. Yeah. Top doctor says, which top doctor? Want to answer that question before you even tell me what's going to next coming out of your mouth? Like, which top doctor? What's his credentials? What's the modeling based on? What theories did they use? Which mathematical formulas did you use to predict these things? But they won't give you that. They just give you a snippet. Top doctor says this, and everybody falls in line and goes, okay, I got to work 50 hours this week, so I don't really care that much. And that is the cycle that we're in, is people who are busy and working constantly, juggling 2-3 things at home, don't give a crap about looking into these things, and they just accept it blindly.
And ironically, the same things that cause them to have to work more hours and do more things to make ends meet are derivative of the people running things. And so when you don't know what's going on, it's a vicious cycle. And truthfully, I believe government preys on the fact that people really don't understand how things work. Because if they did, there would be so much anger. We're going to play a video here as I think about this.
And if you think for a second that they're not privy to these psychological things, you would be lying to yourself.
Oh, 100%. I mean, they 100% know. In fact, it was the Sage Group in the UK put out a whole document, and I believe the Ontario Science Table did too, on basically the psychological techniques on how to best get people to follow along with public restrictions. So don't tell me they don't think about this stuff. They 100% do. They've written documents about it, and I've shown them. So, I mean, people need to open their minds and be a little more creative. To again, it's that, well, my government has my best interest at heart. They would never do anything to harm me. Crap. You know what I mean? Like, it's psychologically painful to accept that information. So let's just not. But
so I want to make a point about Trudeau saying that, like, you know, think again if you don't want to get this vaccine. Section 2A of our charter says public health policies without conscience-based exceptions fail the Oakes test and are unconstitutional. Ontario statute law, the Immunization of School Pupils Act, reflects that analysis of those rights. So that will never happen, no matter how hard he tries. It's already a statute. It's not.
Yep. Oh, it's posturing. They're putting fear. And honestly, you want to know what it would take? It doesn't matter the legalities of it, Paul. Let's be real here. If enough people support it, we're going to watch it happen. And by the time it reaches the court, we already know how long it can take to play out in court, right? And that's assuming the court's going to make the right decision.
I think most parents now for kids, I mean, the School Pupils Act that we're referring to are like, the vaccine isn't really going to help a kid if they have no underlying issues.
No.
But getting it, if you have to the point where the government has influenced your life to the point where it is messing the child's life up, restricting their ability to see their friends, restricting their ability to get an education, forcing them to remote learning, not allowed to go on field trips, got to take a test every day, fill out a form every day. If that's the route they're going, most parents are going to fall in line and just accept that we got to get our kid vaccinated because look at all these hoops we're going to have to jump through just so she can actually, or he or she can actually show up to class and then still be masked and not be able to touch anything and blah, 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 blah. Right. So that's literally what that video we showed with Trudeau, he's posturing to do that with another sector.
And this is why public opinion needs to speak up now. Like, you need to be vocal. Like, somebody's starting to tell, like, that's a threat. That's the way I read that. He's trying to be intimidating and scary. And if he wasn't such a, like you said, a daffodil, like, I wish he would take me up in a volunteer boxing match. Anthony Fury, I am so jealous that you got to get in the ring with him, man. But
can Fury fight?
Yeah, he was the journalist who boxed them. Yeah. No, I
remember seeing that video and he just ate jabs on repeat. It was
no, that was an older guy. That was even funny. It was an older MP, and he's just throwing short jabs, and Trudeau's just got his chin out and just taking them. Don't call it a comeback. I remember that video. It's just stupid. Don't call it a comeback, and it's just him eating jabs on repeat. Anyways, you need to
laugh
sometimes. That's what it is. All right, I'm gonna play this video. This is Trudeau getting grilled. They talk about like holding, this is the mentality of our people in power. This is how out of their depth they are. And if people truly understood what was at risk here, like the amount of debt we've accumulated, you know how much money it's going to cost just to service our debt? That means our cost of living is going to go up because they're going to increase taxes or cut services or both. And here's a good journalist actually doing his job, calling the prime minister out on this, and the prime minister, on a not unexpectedly, gives us a comical answer.
Regardless of what that figure is exactly, future governments are going to have to carry that debt. The servicing costs on that are going to be very high.
Sorry?
The servicing costs on the debt that you're going to have to carry, that you're adding to now, right?
Interest rates are at historic lows.
It's still a lot of money.
No.
It's still a lot of money.
No.
And you don't know where. Okay, so, but how are you going to pay for that?
I'm sorry.
Regardless of what that figure is exactly, future governments are going to have to carry that debt. The servicing costs on that are going to be very high.
Sorry?
The servicing costs on the debt that you're going to have to carry, that you're adding to now, right?
Interest rates are at historic lows, Glenn.
Okay,
this is your prime minister. Well, Glenn, I know that we have massive amounts of interest we're going to have to pay on debt, but interest rates are at historic lows, Glenn. like obviously,
spending
interest rates can change at any time. Yeah, that is the stupidity of the person in power. Like, he literally thought he was. Well, Glenn, there's nothing to worry. Interest rates are low. This dude has ballooned your deficit so much, and this is the wake-up call, people. The longer you let this crap go on, he's ballooned the deficit so much that two things are going to happen. The interest on the debt has gone massively up. Just to pay the interest on our debt now is going to be hundreds of millions more. So now we either need to increase taxes. And by the way, Canada's got, we're pretty taxed. We're tapped. Not really. They'll find ways. Or cut services. Or both. And I promise you will probably be both. And not initially. They'll go raise taxes first, right?
I hope they don't get reelected. Because if we go down that road and spending continues this way, middle class probably won't exist anymore. Like, it's getting to that point where it's very concerning. Like, we're on the point of economic collapse unless a bunch of people bail us out. Like, we've printed so much money. Everything's more expensive. Look at the pumps. It's $1.30 right now. It was like 4 months ago, 5 months ago, it was like $1.15, $1.13, $1.11, and like a year ago it was in the 90s. Like, it's not. Then your groceries too, everything's more expensive. There's free money everywhere. They're printing it. A third of the money in circulation was printed in the last year.
free money.
But interest
Yeah,
rates are the
nothing for
lowest
free.
they've ever been. Yeah, but your spending's higher than it's ever been historically, which means dollar amount, we're still spending more than ever. So, but he better prepare himself. Like, that's one question. Well, if you're pretending to be on the campaign trail, guess what? Gloves are going to
It's
come
good, yeah.
off,
How
and
many?
reporters are going to say how they actually feel. And this is a close race. They keep saying it's like, let's
Cutting in and out here, Paul.
I
Sorry, I think
conservatives.
yeah.
Sorry, I would
Sorry,
almost
I
bet
heard
that
conservatives
wind up with. Yeah, wind up with like a majority government at this point. I think like you can do and say all you want in the headlines, but if every time you go to the pumps, you're like, geez, every time you go to the grocery store, you're like, God damn, like every time you go buy something, you're like, man, it is insane. Like, and then you look at how much frivolous spending that this government does. They're throwing money at anything, everything. You could make a document of ridiculous spending monthly and update it monthly.
Yeah,
and
totally.
it would still be ridiculous. It's no, I'm not even trying to like make fun or like make a joke here. That's the seriousness of the nature. We're in the trillions. Like that's where we're at. It's pathetic. Like talk about somebody in 27 to 33 year range wants to settle down, buy a house. Okay, well, competition for housing market is through the roof, in part due to massive immigration that liberals have encouraged, and the massive inflation rates that have gone up. Therefore altering the market by allowing people to buy and rent. So now there's way more rentals on the market, less owners, which means less for homeowners to buy, which means costs have increased since they've gone into power.
Yep.
Almost quadruple in most areas. Then
Well, yeah,
your
now that you
bidding
say that,
wars for housing, like how does one individual or two individuals making $20 an hour, if you're making $40 an hour in your household, how do you get a down payment that you're not going broke paying a mortgage? Just it's so the future that your citizens hold, if he's holding on to the wokeness that is the young group and like playing on those, okay, well, those young group want to do those things. They're looking at what happened during you've been in power. The life they wanted to build, that they saw building because it's the template that their parents has given them. This is what you work hard for: a family, a home, place to raise your kids. And it's no longer obtainable, and now you're stuck to the concrete jungle that is apartment living and a parking lot. Are they going to vote for you again if your new budget is like driving us even further in debt? So like it's almost laughable to the point where like they think that they're doing a good job. Like I don't know how you can sit behind at the desk and like have these conversations and be like, this is definitely what we should be doing. They're basically buying off the media. They're buying off people, throwing more free money at people. Unbeknownst to them, is just driving up the cost of everything and preying on ignorance and trying to control the headlines. But like, if you watch the polls, the surveys that go out, it's like, you guys are not clear cut at all. And everything I've ever seen with any election in Canada is the Liberals are about to fall. Everybody on NDP train jumps ship and signs on with the Conservatives. So it could very well be a landslide for the Conservatives. They really haven't campaigned yet, other than pointing out flaws of the Liberal government. Nothing concrete's coming out yet by design, so it can't be nitpicked.
Well, there's a bunch of reasons why they do that in politics. I remember talking to a politician like about this, and they basically said, listen, you don't put out a platform or anything too early. One of the reasons is you don't want to deal with more criticism than you have to, or for longer than you have to. But they literally said, we don't want our ideas being stolen or changed slightly and then adopted into other platforms. So you basically wait to the final minute so that other parties gotta do the same.
So it's like the final possession of a basketball game, and you're letting the other team know what play you're running.
100%.
Why would you ever do that, right? Like, don't tip your hat or tip your hand until you have to, so that they don't have enough time to actually sit down and like banter back and forth and about how can we make this better. So yeah, they're holding their cards close to their chest, and people are kind of giving them a hard time about it. I'm like, what do you like? We're not even on the campaign trail yet. Like, pump the brakes.
Yeah, let's go. I'm gonna fire off about 3 to 5 rapid fire videos because yeah, you want to talk about campaign trail and how much
Illegally,
ammunition
I assume
party-
is what you're leading to. How Justin Trudeau is illegally using.
Totally blanking
It's
here.
supposed to be a donation, not taxpayer money. But telling you he's not telling you it's on the campaign trail. He's just doing campaign photo op type things on our dollar and saying it's not a campaign trail. It falls right in line with how like there's snakes in the grass. Like that's what the liberals are. And I haven't been this offended by liberals until this group was elected. Like Chrétien, were you that offended by Chrétien as you were Trudeau?
No, I actually thought Chrétien was a decent
And
prime minister on some issues.
Trudeau has driven them very far left. And like if there's anything Canadians can agree on, far left, terrible. Far right, terrible.
Yep.
Somewhere centrist is the best method for benefit of all. And I cannot stand this group. They talk to me like I'm an idiot. Every time I watch a video, I'm like, I ain't that stupid, Justin. Try again. Like that, and you have like zero respect for Justin because he wrote his father's name, did nothing, accomplished nothing in his life, wrote his father's name to the top, should have earned his stripes working his way up.
Yep. Straight into an MP role and then straight into running for
Puts
prime minister.
anybody who questions him, puts him at arm's length, puts someone in between him, does not accept criticism. He is a pampered private school daffodil who is now running our country and has no idea what he's doing. And it is very hard to watch the destruction of the country that I grew up loving. So,
I mean, the flag's still in the background. I still love this country, and that's why we're here doing this. Your voice does have power, and just speaking truth into existence. My goodness, we're all so afraid. I said this before, Paul, and back me up on this, but self-censorship is the biggest issue Canadians are facing. We're so worried about what people will say that we don't even say things that need to be said. That's like, we're so scared about offending someone because we're Canadians, we're kind, that we won't even have the tough conversations when they're needed. Well, the tough conversations are needed. Adults are required at the table, and it's time for the children to leave. That's where we're at. All right, here we go, because there's a campaign kicking off potentially. There's lots of stuff out there.
Last night on the plane that of all of the different instances that you recalled, have you since been made aware or remembered of other instances, and if so, how many?
I am wary of being definitive about this because the recent pictures that came out, I had not remembered. And I think the question is, how can you not remember that? Fact is, I didn't understand how hurtful this is to people who live with discrimination every single day. This has been a...
So sorry. That's your prime minister. How many times have you worn blackface? Well, I don't know. It's so many times I couldn't even tell you. I didn't realize how hurtful it was. Who's dressing in blackface all the time that they couldn't tell you how many times? Like Halloween one time?
The pathetic part is that he would have been prepped for these questions. Like before he even said, I'm going to run, he literally would have been sat down. Where's your dirt? Like, where's the dirt on you?
Mm-hmm.
They would have found these things by vetting him
and prepared him
and said, okay, here's the gist of what we need to say when these questions get asked. That's still what you gave us? That was your best. That was after preparation for PR. And it's just like, that's what I don't remember. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was offensive. And it's like, so if people who are unaware of like the blackface started by a white actor in the South of the United States, which portrayed the dumb Negro as they explain it, and he would perform on stage as a comedy act.
Yeah.
So that character's name was Jim Crow. The same Jim Crow laws were named after said character that kept Black Americans as a second-class citizen in the United States for over 100 years. So, having said that, he is the son of a prime minister. Either you're stupid or you're racist. Either one
both.
isn't fit for duty. So, or both. Right? You know what I mean? Like, that's where we're at with that. Like, there was so many flags during his campaign, but everybody liked the twinkle in his eye, I guess. But, like, he had nothing of substance. And I think, like, I remember that coming into that, and, like, it was kind of voter fatigue for the Conservatives because they hadn't really. Everything was, like, okay, but it wasn't great. And it was like nothing had changed in the last couple of years in terms of people's lifestyles and things like that. And, like, looking back, that would be amazing if things didn't change so poorly for, like, a 4-year stretch. And I think that, like, people wanted to mix it up and were tired of the Conservative government just kind of, like, being, no, we can't do that because our economy, no, we can't, it's boring talk. And then they ended up voting for this guy. But the whole time, the Conservatives basically said, this guy doesn't know how to run an economy, doesn't know what he's talking about. This is what's exactly going to happen. He's going to spend, drive inflation up and ruin the economy. On point. So the writing was on the wall back then. If you haven't seen the sexual assault accusations, if you haven't seen the fact that he's basically been scrubbed from any hours of working as a teacher, there's an NDA out because he slept with one of the college students. If you aren't privy to him not denouncing the genocide in China, not even showing up to vote while they strip Muslim women of their rights, their religion, basically entering them into a re-education camp while some of them are being killed. If you're not privy to the SNC Lavalin, if you're not privy to, I don't know, name 50 others. Like, it's just like on repeat. He's going to tell you what you want to hear to your face. Do the exact opposite behind your back.
He's that crappy high school boyfriend who would tell his girlfriend whatever she wanted to hear. And then the moment it was, convenient for him and her back was turned, he'd say something and do something else. It's the same thing with Trudeau. He'll whisper sweet nothings in the Canadians' ears every election.
With Vance in the military, when he promoted him, a reporter straight up asked him, did you know about these accusations before the promotion?
And he says,
he does what he always does. He looks at them, he goes, and cocks his head to the side with a smirk. No, I did not. That's his tell. Like, if I played poker with him, it would be so easy to beat him because that's his tell. He does that.
And Trudeau's got a good hand. How do you know?
He's got a grin, and he turns his head to the side, and he kind of, like, talks down to you, right, and says no. And then what did we find out later? They knew about it years ago, and now Vance has charges against them.
Oh, it's a surprise. He didn't know. Come on.
Shocker. But I'm just waiting for him to come out and be like, but he has a good heart.
He's a good cop. He cares.
Every time a liberal does something wrong, they have a good heart and they're able to keep their jobs. But if a conservative does something wrong, they need to be fired and arrested. Like, it's just
Paul, conservatives are heartless, so that's fair. So it's like the mentality, right?
I couldn't think of a more heartless person in this country than Justin Trudeau.
100%.
He is
like
at least fake human being. He's he's a snake in the grass, and he preys on the weak, and he preys on ignorance, and he'll lie right to your face, like, over and over on repeat. Like, this last year has just been, like, amplified at how bad he's gotten.
Here we go. Let's play back in the way back machine. Election's coming up. Let's not remember how crappy of a prime minister Justin Trudeau has been.
Because honestly, Mr. Prime Minister, I was prepared to be injured in the line of duty when I joined the military. Nobody forced me to join the military. I was prepared to be killed in action. What I wasn't prepared for, Mr. Prime Minister, is Canada turning its back on me.
Gets me every time.
So which veteran was it that you were talking about?
Why are we still fighting against certain veterans groups in court? Because they're asking for more than we are able to give right now.
Okay, everyone, asking for more than we're able to give right now. How many hundreds of billions of dollars have gone out for COVID? Asking for more than we can give right now. We don't even have subs, planes. We don't even have the equipment we need. They're asking for more than we can give right now. Oh, did you want something for something I agree with? Make it rain, make it rain. That's your prime minister. And I feel no shame in calling that man an absolute and utter hypocrite who deserves to be kicked out of power and to be shamed publicly for the rest of his life for answers like that. Looking a veteran in the eye and telling them you're asking for more than we can give as you take veterans groups to court, and then what, a couple of years later you turn around and you show your complete disregard for the budget, which you had already shown a disregard for at that point. So don't tell me sweet nothings that you care, that it's more than you can give because you just didn't want to give. It's more than I was ever willing to give, now or ever. That's what he should have said.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can bring up the video of him basically making fun of the Indigenous woman protesting.
Yeah, about that.
Protesting at a Liberal fundraiser years ago about the 51 boil water advisories on reserves in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
This
and he laughed
now it's reeling. Like it's coming to rear its head again because of what's going on now that they're investigating the schools. And what was it, 2-3 months ago? He said we're going to have in place to help Indigenous people. Nothing's come of it. So this just falls in line with who he is as a human being. He just says what you want to hear. That room wanted to hear her get shut out of that room, and then he got funding, and then. Now that the Indigenous schools is in the headlines and he's taking heat for it, well, they're going to get some. It's just like, it's all just game. I don't think he cares about anything but himself.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly it.
Literally, she came in and she was complaining about the boil water advisories and asking clean water quite loudly because she was a protester and trying to draw attention to it. And he said, thanks for your donation tonight, as she got escorted out the building.
It was hundreds of dollars to get in, I believe, for that.
Yeah. Fast forward years later, where we're at with what's going on.
Kneeling on a grave with a teddy bear, or kneeling on open graves with teddy bears, and claiming he gives a shit about Indigenous rights. 58 water boil advisories later that were still there at the beginning.
And then a Liberal went and offered them pensions as payment for all the deaths that were caused. He said, oh, she made a mistake. She has a good heart. So this is where he's at. It's just, he's a photo op queen.
Let's pull that up, Paul.
He does.
This is Justin Trudeau telling a protester, speaking out about the water boil advisories on Indigenous reserves, 58 of them across Canada. And he openly mocks her and makes fun of her and says, well, thanks for your money. Now get out. Here we go. Enjoy. Your Prime Minister, everyone.
Prime Minister Trudeau, people in Grassy Narrows are suffering from mercury poisoning. You committed to addressing this crisis.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much for your donation tonight. I really appreciate it. And as we know, the Liberal Party is filled with different perspectives and different opinions, and we respect them all. And our commitment.
If it was your family that's been waiting for 500 days, if your family was suffering from mercury poisoning, what would you do? If it was your family, would you accept it? Would you accept 500 days for 1%? Mr. Trudeau, for 500 days, you have not kept the commitment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your donation. Thank you. Get out. Thank you. Yep. Thanks. Woo! Clapping like freaking seals in that room. Bunch of morons.
The worst part is everybody has different opinions and we respect them all. You just made fun of her opinion. People literally don't have drinking water. This is Canada that we're
A
talking
human
about.
right.
Don't
The World Health Organization, United Nations, they recognize universal access to water as a human right. We don't have it here in Canada, and the man who virtue signaled for this group as continually he just shit the bed. Pardon my language. He doesn't care. He'll say whatever it takes to get elected. Let us not forget that he did that. Let us not forget that the moment it's convenient, the moment you're no longer useful for something for him, you're gone again and you're back under the bus. That's what you are to him. You're a number.
Yeah,
You're a vote to keep his privilege and power.
I mean, the best campaign device you could use is a video of all of these things on loop, as one of the viewers mentioned. Like, yeah, like just put them on loop, share it around, let it go viral. This is who he is. It's who he's been. It's who he's always going to be. You know, he's just not fit for office. Like, I say that genuinely, he's not fit for office.
Well, speaking of not being fit for office, I got another video, Paul. Let's just keep peppering them in, eh? Hey, I don't know about you, but when the prime minister of a free country says that he admires the basic dictatorship of a nation that imprisons Muslim Uyghurs and harvests their organs and does these kind of things, I think that should be a red flag. But apparently Canadians didn't care. But I just want to remind them before we go into another election, now you can know and you can care.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China. Because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say, we need to go green as fast as we need to start, investing in solar.
Pause. Investing in solar. You mean like China just got caught using slave labor in their solar? But I mean, they know best because China's basic dictatorship allows them to go green quick. This is your prime minister. I don't care. If I'm in a democratic nation, if my leader says I admire dictatorships for any shape, way, form, reason, I don't care. Red flag. Don't ever forget that. And remember it and keep it in your mind as he does stuff that seems tyrannical. I don't know about you, but we want a vaccine passport. Do you know that they're already kind of talking about the social credit system in the UK based on what? The vaccine passport. So let's kind of tie social credit into the passport, and it's going to be great. But I mean, nothing to see here.
But
He
that's
just
the
admired
thing
China.
with the vaccine passports is people seem to think, oh, well, I'm already vaccinated. It's just a piece of paper.
Yep.
No, it's not. You're signing over your ability to everything. Whatever they tie to it, you are now tied to your bodily autonomy is gone. So whatever they tell you you need to get to continue to keep this passport, you're going to have to get, because you're going to be extra, like, basically cast aside from society if you don't. So no, we don't need it. If you want to make federal one that you can put a stamp on your passport, so when you enter a different country it says I'm vaccinated, sure, that's what we've always done. If you got, whenever you enter a country, they'll tell you what vaccinations you need to enter because they have those issues there, right? And they don't want you bringing them in. They don't have the healthcare system to support those things. But we're not a poverty-stricken nation. We don't really need vaccine passport. Like, I don't understand why people think this is good. The majority of people don't. Like, every poll you look at online, it's like 70+% of people don't want it. I've even seen polls as high as I've always seen it high as 86% of people don't want it. And that's not just like one poll. It's like I've seen like 50 now. And I've only seen like one that said people wanted it. And it was a small sample size. And it is the Fistmans of the world that are pumping it up because he's working in cahoots with the government without saying he is, because he'd be a subject to FOIAs. And he's already been at events for liberals. So, like,
I didn't know that. You got pictures? I'm curious now.
I had at one point, I don't know how deep I'd have to look to find it for you, but I did have a poster from an event that was a guest speaker, and there were science table members at a liberal event as guest speakers.
You're right. You wouldn't want to seem like you're working for the government, but which, by the way, a lot of them are being funded by public health and other things for modeling and different studies. So to say that they're not tied, it's like arm's length. Like, it's not the sole source of their funding, but they all seem, a lot of them have, studies they're involved in that are getting bits coming from the government, like public health, Ontario Public Health, etc.
life's never been better for public health.
Oh, it is. If you're
Other than the
it's
bashing,
amazing.
they're gonna take long term. Money's rolling in like crazy. Like for every study you'd ever want to do, money's coming in. Now's the time to get your money. But like, if you go against anything like a vaccine passport, money might stop because now we don't like what they. So we're not going to give you the money. That's why you get these like results that 99% of people get this result. And it's like, well, yeah, because the 99% were people you paid to say those things, right? And
like the old
even
tobacco studies.
1% of like 1% of them still said no after you paid them money.
Yep.
That should be the more.
No, it never. Yeah, it's
after
like
all
back in
that,
the day.
1% of them was like, nah, I still can't actually say that because it's terrible. Even though you paid me, no, I'm never going to get paid again. They still did the right thing, and yeah, it's awful.
It's by the time the studies get out, it's already been published, and then it's the information's out there. It's like we've seen this multiple times, and then it's like, well, wait a minute, that wasn't completely correct, and then it gets redacted or completely changed, and then people don't remember that. They just remember the fixation. Bad science has a way of propagating itself forward. We need to move on here. ARR versus RR. So absolute risk reduction versus relative risk reduction of the vaccines. I don't like giving my opinion, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to find this article. Once I find it. Where did it go? Apparently, here we go. All right. This is from The Lancet. Not my opinion. This is called COVID-19 vaccine efficacy and effectiveness, the elephant not in the room. So relative risk reduction for the vaccines, 95% for Pfizer, BioNTech, 94% for Moderna, 91% for Gamaleya, 67% for J&J, 67% for AstraZeneca, Oxford. This was released in April of 2021. Continuing on. Now, what are the absolute risk reductions? This is why you don't ever hear ARRs. You're only ever hearing the relative risk reduction. Why? Because ARRs tend to be ignored because they give a much less impressive effect size than RRRs. 1 to 3% for AstraZeneca, 1 to 2% for Moderna, 1 to 2% for J&J, 0.93% for Gamaleya, and 0.84% for Pfizer BioNTech vaccines. So, absolute risk reduction, less than 5%. Relative risk reduction, up to 95%. Sounds great, though, if we use the relative risk reduction. And this is what we talked about, data manipulation. Using, like if we're going to show data, I don't want to show, for instance, last year, July. If we're going to compare July of this year to last year, July, why the hell are you showing me a chart that doesn't show me July of last year? And this happens all the time in mainstream articles. They'll show you like a snippet, but they'll shorten it up so they only show what they want to show. Examples of data manipulation. There you have the Lancet, and this is, I'm saying data manipulation. It's not my words. They kind of talked about that in that article. It's not really giving people a true informed consent if they don't really understand the absolute risk reduction and only have the understanding of relative risk. So less than 5%. What do you take it from that, Paul? Because again, that's from the Lancet. The elephant, they literally called it the elephant not in the room. Like people aren't even talking about this. And less than 5%, April of 2021, that came out.
Yeah, I mean, why aren't we talking about it? Can't imagine why. Canada's just an echo chamber. Right. We're not going to talk about anything that isn't go get your fucking vaccine. You know what I mean? Like, that's all it is. That's all we talk about. Vaccines. Best thing ever. Go get them. Yep. You're going to need them. If you don't want to, you're in trouble. Vaccine passports. You won't be able to go to school. You can't travel. You got to quarantine. Go get your vaccine. It's in your best interest. Do it. Don't worry about the side effects.
And if you say no, you hate your neighbor. You want people to die. You're a terrible human being.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Grandma will die. You'll probably die too. Everyone's going to die. Get your vaccine.
Well,
That's basically in a nutshell.
When you have this prime minister telling you things. So, when is the Bollywood? Remember that? He was all dressing up in India.
I have memory lapses. These things I have just
as do most Canadians.
And pretend that they don't happen because I'm so embarrassed.
Well, I mean, come on. You need to remember that your prime minister can get down. I mean, they were making fun of him in India media because they're like, even like it was. I guess it's like dressed up garb what he was wearing, and they're like, even Indian people don't wear that stuff that much that often. Like, it's kind of an occasion thing, and he was like everywhere he went, he was putting on a different outfit.
Yeah,
but that's your
it's,
prime
you
minister.
know,
So
the photo op queen himself strikes again. This is just this, man. Anytime there's a photo to be taken where he can look good in his own eyes, in his own vain eyes, he's gonna do it. And
you
he's
ever see the picture?
Gonna look good doing it.
Yeah. Would you ever see the picture? It's a picture of his photographer taking a picture of him
While signing autographs of photos
Yes.
of himself. Yes. It's the it's the Trudeau inception is what it is.
It's a picture inside of a picture.
How-
Trudeau's inception.
How could you be more full of yourself? I think that is just like the ego. Like you could smoke a pound of marijuana and you still wouldn't be high enough to see the apex of his ego. I think
What do you
that's
mean? What ego? Yeah. I'm just gonna keep pulling up different videos here as we talk. I actually did this out of order because of Trudeau's gaffes. I had all the videos lined up. I was supposed to fire them through, but I got angry about other stuff and we went off topic. But I mean, this guy is literally like he's a photo book of just gas. Here, I got another one. Did you all forget about this one? Did you all forget about this one? Yeah, Prime Minister of Canada. Woo! Oh, goodness gracious. It is so bad. There's the other one I was thinking of when he's at the table and he turns to the leader and the guy is like next to him and he's just like, nah, son, completely ignores him, acts like he doesn't hear him. Then he's like, turns to the other side and nobody there and he's just like, oh. And then he pretends to like adjust his pants and look down at his bag and stuff. He's just getting like, even the world leaders are like completely ignoring the guy. But anyways. Let's see if I got some more here. I got some more giggles in here, I'm sure. I had a bunch of Trudeau gas. We already did the videos, so. What else do we got? There's a lot of love out for Trudeau when it comes to memes, though. It's kind of disturbing. A lot more good ones than bad ones. And then I guess Trudeau, like talk shows and stuff, you talk about loving himself. Like only this guy would go on a comedic talk show where he knows he's going to get grilled because it's about him. All right, everyone. I think. Oh, that's. All right, I think that's a good place to end it. I've only grilled Trudeau for a better part of an hour and almost and a half. But we need to remember there is an election coming up. And none of this makes sense. Trudeau's acting like Oprah with booster shots, and you get one, and you get one till 2024. They're rolling out passports, and they are trying to, and then they're going to say potential restrictions. They're not doing it yet. Everybody's kind of being like on the sidelines. Ford's like, oh, we won't do that provincially. Kenny's same thing. They're kind of being specific with their wording. Sounds like they're open to the federal idea. We'll see.
Especially when they haven't talked to their pollsters yet. And this is just Trudeau taking credit for something so no one else can before the election. He just wants to be like, I got you vaccine the next 3 years. Congrats.
Maybe
They might not work.
That would be best case scenario. Like if that's all it was, if he's just trying to be like, see, I'm amazing, like Trumpian. He's doing his Trump version of Trudeau. I'm amazing. I've gotten all these vaccines. Congratulations. This is what happens when I'm your prime minister. That kind of went into some weird English. Anyways. Elections coming up. We know that this doesn't make sense logically. Now is the time to speak up. You're running out of time to speak up. We have speech laws on the books coming down. Bill C-36. I want to say C-12, but I feel like I'm getting it wrong. There's two of them. No, C-10. The one doesn't look like it's going to go through the Senate yet. But again, if this guy gets back into power, he most certainly seems like they're going to go towards some dark areas. We'll just put it that way. Some of the stuff they're talking about. Thank you, everybody, for so much for watching. And if I see this, thanks. What's your email for donations? divergemedia@outlook.com. Send it there. Or go to divergemedia.ca. We also have the donate page there as well. So thanks for everyone who can help that or help with that. We really appreciate it. You want to close out with anything, Paul? You got something in you?
No, like and share our videos. Make sure you get the good word out. We're trying to build something here, and in terms of the election, we all have our duty to get information to those who may not have it. So if you see all those videos like we just showed you, and you agree with our stance, you can more than welcome to share it and make sure people are informed before going in the election, and make sure people vote. I think that's, we cross the world to go to war, but we won't cross the street to go vote. I think we need to change our attitudes about voting, because it matters. We found out in this last year and a half that it really matters. So whoever you vote for, make sure you know what you're voting for and you're confident in it, and you don't need to live and die with them. If you vote for them because they said one thing and did the exact opposite, feel free to be pissed off.
Exactly.
We've been very critical of the Liberals. We've been very critical of the Conservatives. We've made fun of the NDP. We call it as we see it. I don't really like politicians at all, to be honest. They all kind of have their own agenda, which is getting elected and reelected, and we fall to the wayside of that. But we got to choose one. So
yeah, Thomas Sowell has a quote, and we'll just end on that because I think it's the perfect description of what's going on. We would be better served as a country if you realize that politicians' job isn't to serve you. Their first priority is getting reelected. Their second priority is staying in power, getting elected. Second priority is staying in power, and their third priority is your priorities, and it's far, far behind. Politicians are far more concerned about them than they are you. They will say and do whatever it takes to get in power. So it is important to remember the history on the record, because Canadians have a short memory. It doesn't matter if it's Conservative, NDP, Liberal. We are going to be pulling up the gaffes, any missteps of the major political parties. We will be pulling them up throughout the election and pointing them out. Because if you don't remember, it's real easy for people to whisper sweet nothings in your ear again. But I remember, and lots of Canadians remember, but not enough. And that is our job as Canadians, to make sure this type of information gets out. I mean, this was like 30 minutes. I came up with 6 or 7 videos of Trudeau and gaffes and things that he had done that were so outrageous that had made national headlines in just a short amount of time.
Yeah, maybe we'll snippet that into a video we can make go viral.
Well, I think there will be an election video, or not an election video, but I will be putting together all of his gaffes. Maybe I'll do a timeline of his gaffes as prime minister and try to put them in order. That would be difficult because there's been so many, like 4 ethics violations. I mean, man, where do you start? Like, do you go off on each ethics violation? Like the Aga Khan one was one of my favorite. Well, he's a personal family friend that I hadn't seen in 30 years since I was a kid, who was also lobbying my government for money. Okay, buddy, you're a good guy. But anyways, I digress. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Greg Staley from Diverge Media with our guest correspondent joining us, Paul Staley. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Uh-oh. There it is.